I'm a little disturbed this evening by a story that I hadn't realised. There's a name that ought to unsettle the conscience of any liberal democracy, and that's a fellow called Makis Voridis. And his appointment as Greece's Minister for Migration and Asylum is not merely unfortunate, but emblematic of a wider political decay, the moral erosion that allows a man once nicknamed the Hammer for his violent activism in fascist student circles to be put in charge of vulnerable populations. But I mean, we can look at his biography if you want. It's fairly grim. But we must ask, what are his plans? What are the dangers? More importantly, what obligations, legal, moral, and historical, does Greece still owe, especially in the light of its 2011 condemnation by the European Court of Human Rights for torturing refugees? This is something that I'm afraid has gone on for some time. Makis Voridis is not some naive apparatchik parachuted into power. He is a polished, unrepentant ideologue. In the 1980s, he led the youth wing of a party that idolized the dictator Yorgos Papadopoulos, the architect of Greece's military junta. He was caught on camera, I've got a photograph here, paroling Athens Law School with an axe, homemade axe, targeting leftist students, and he was expelled for it. And later he would align himself with Holocaust deniers, found the Hellenic Front, and serve as a senior member of the Laos party, home of Greece's most odious far-right elements. This is not forgotten history. This is a through line, and now as Minister for Migration, Voridis has inherited the most ethically sensitive brief in the European Union, the treatment of people fleeing war, poverty, and persecution, and his rhetoric is chilling. He's described Muslim migrants as threats to European cohesion, and his appointment signals a government in retreat from liberalism, replacing policy with punishment. But Voridis should tread carefully. Greece has history, not just ancient but recent. In 2011, the European Court of Human Rights found Greece guilty of inhuman and degrading treatment, even torture, in the way it handled asylum seekers, and the conditions in detention centres were appalling, overcrowded, unsanitary, violent. People were locked up for months with no medical care, no legal aid, no due process. The ruling was clear. Greece was ordered to reform its system, to overhaul its asylum procedures, its detention facilities, its respect for basic human dignity. And yet, 14 years on, those obligations remain unmet. There were four specific laws that it was expected to revise. It hasn't done so. NGOs report that pushbacks in the Aegean are routine. Legal representation is patchy at best. And only this year, Greece was again found guilty by the ECHR, this time for systematic and unlawful deportation of a woman who sought refuge. I want to be blunt. Mr. Voridis lectures Europe on migration. He would do well to read his country's charge sheet. Greece is not free to rewrite the rules. It is bound by international law, by European directives, and by its own past failures. Now, it's only fair to acknowledge that Greece has borne the brunt of Europe's migration crisis. It's done so with limited resources, erratic EU support, and constant global pressure from Turkey. Sympathy is warranted, but it's not bottomless. Sympathy cannot extend to state-sanctioned cruelty. Sympathy doesn't excuse illegal pushbacks, indefinite detention, weaponized bureaucracy. The new EU migration pact may allow member states to pay €20,000 per rejected asylum seeker, but it cannot buy moral immunity. Greece is a frontline state, but it's also a constitutional democracy, not a fortress, and herein lies the danger of Voridis' tenure. His very presence in the ministry signals a shift from problem solving to scapegoating. NGOs such as the Greek Council for Refugees, which challenged the state in court and upholds international sanctions and standards, are now underfunded, sidelined, and slandered. Their legal victories, in particular the recent ECHR ruling, are thorns in the side of a government desperate to project strength over legality. But the strategy is important. Mitsotakis' decision to install Voridis is not just policy, it's theatre. It's aimed at shoring up new democracies' crumbling support, particularly among voters drifting to the far right. And it follows a now familiar European pattern where centre-right parties feel threatened and they mimic their most dangerous competitors. But the irony is grotesque. After the 2023 Tempe train disaster, when anger boiled over at the state's negligence, the government tried a reset. And Voridis was the answer, a man once associated with neo-fascist street violence, now in charge of migration policy, while NGOs, judges and journalists are undermined. This is not a reset, this is a regression. Makis Voridis is not merely a controversial figure, he's a symbol of how a democracy can forget the lessons it once paid dearly to learn. He inherits a ministry with a legacy of abuse, condemnation and international shame. He must not be allowed to forget the 2011 ruling, nor can we, because the treatment of refugees is not a peripheral issue, it's the crucible in which the nation's values are tested. Greece must choose between legality and lawlessness, between compassion and coercion, between its obligations and its obsessions. Voridis may believe in the axe, but Europe must still believe in the rule of law.